services. So I'm starting the live stream. So I see a screen that says redirecting to the live stream page. There we go. All right, so I think that we are ready. I'm going to mute that. All right, so on my phone, I see both of us. We are live streaming. I'm going to close off my phone. Well, I don't think it's actually harming anything. So, all right, so let me go to Zoom. I do want to record. So if you're seeing us, bear with us as I check my settings here. Record. All right, we're recording and we are live. Welcome to the Williamsburg Botanical Gardens 2021 Virtual Butterfly Festival live stream. My name is Judith Alberts and I serve on the Gardens Board of Directors. And I'm going to start with a short video or a short intro here. Oh, share screen and of course slideshow from the beginning. There we go. From the beginning. There's always a glitch. Joni, are you seeing my?
I see your PowerPoint screen.
Ah, there. I am now in my slideshow. Very good.
And I see your slideshow.
Thank you so much. All righty. So this is the 2021 Virtual Butterfly Festival from the Williamsburg Botanical Garden. And today is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So we will observe a moment of silence before we begin. Thank you very much. Again, welcome to the Williamsburg Botanical Gardens Virtual Butterfly Festival 2021. And we are live streaming. This is a first for us. So we are also recording this as a backup because one never knows what glitch one will run into. If you're watching in real time, please use live chat to ask your questions and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. As I said, bear with us in case of glitches. We're all volunteers. For anyone watching far away from Williamsburg, Virginia, you may not know anything about our garden, but we are located inside Freedom Park. We are free to all visitors, including canines, who wish to bring well-behaved humans on a leash. And we're open every day of the year from 7 a.m. until dusk. The garden is very small, only 2 acres inside a roundabout on the way to the parking lot. But we pack a lot into those 2 acres with 18 different types of habitat, including a wildflower meadow, woodlands, wetlands, and an English cottage garden, succulents, and a fairy garden, to name just a few. The garden is purposely more natural than what you might expect when you hear the words botanical garden. It is most definitely not a highly manicured display of high maintenance plantings. Think of it like a wild child garden with strong emphasis on native plants that support pollinators and other wildlife. It is the site of Monarch Waystation number 3394. Our mission is to demonstrate environmentally responsible and sustainable gardening practices and to offer education on those topics. Everything in the garden is tended by dedicated volunteers on a slim budget, so here comes a short pitch. We would love your support because the garden is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We receive no funding from any level of government. We depend on memberships and donations, and We'll put a link to our virtual donations jar in the description of this program. If you are a local resident, we invite you to become a member of the garden. And this is the season to order spring blooming bulbs. And Brent and Becky's, which is located in Gloucester, Virginia, donates a very generous 25% of order totals to nonprofits enrolled in their program. When you designate the nonprofit of your choice, but you start your order at bloominbucks.com. If you shop on Amazon, start at smile.amazon to select the nonprofit of your choice. Of course, we hope that you will designate the garden as your choice. You'll also find the garden on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is obviously, you know that because you're here watching. And if you raise monarchs and live reasonably close to Williamsburg, Virginia, we have a Facebook group called the Milkweed Connection, so members can share milkweed when we get panicky towards the end of the season. So let's get started. One last thing, if you'd like to receive our e-news, you can sign up at bit.ly/WBG news or visit our website. This morning's speaker is Master Naturalist Joni Carlson, whose background includes nuclear analytical chemistry. When she and her husband Mike visited a butterfly farm in 2010, they brought home 2 monarch caterpillar castles. That is, 2 milkweed plants that already had monarch eggs on them. They watched the monarch life cycle unfold and they were hooked. Joni raises and releases many species of butterflies, but she is especially passionate about monarchs, and Mike recently remarked that he has become a butterfly roadie. Joni has been a past speaker for the Williamsburg Botanical Gardens Learn and Grow programs and at our past butterfly festivals. We are so pleased that she has chosen to give her time to us this morning, and welcome. Thank you so much, Joni. I'm going to stop my share and turn the screen over to you along with the mic.
Thank you. I need to figure out how to share my screen now. I've lost my ability to, there it is. Sorry, everybody. And Judith, am I on the correct?
No, I'm seeing your notes.
Okay.
It's the other one.
That's okay.
I know.
Thank you. So it is. Are you seeing my notes still?
I still see your notes.
I'm sorry, everybody.
Good to go.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
All right.
And thank you for the introduction. Judith loves to say that I had a background in chemistry. That was a very short chapter of my life. It was about 10 years in nuclear and food chemistry, and I loved it. And I've had other chapters since then. We did 3 years in a global charity called Mercy Ships, where we lived in a ship and traveled the world. And actually, that's when 9/11 happened, was when we were in Honduras. And so 20 years is really something to think about. And I'm glad that you took a moment of silence, Judith, for that, because that's very important. I'm sure anybody who actually lived through that, you are certainly thinking about that today. So our thoughts and prayers are with the people and the families affected by 9/11. Then I had a chapter of being a tour guide for the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation. And anybody who knows me from that chapter of my life, you know that I love that. And now I'm at William and Mary in the anthropology department as their administrative coordinator. And that's a really exciting chapter right now for me. But all that to say is I am not an expert at butterflies. I am just an enthusiast. And it did start with that little caterpillar castle I live in Surrey, which is just across the water from the Williamsburg Botanical Gardens. So we are all in this coastal plain of Virginia, Southeast Virginia area. So my talk is very geared towards what a way station looks like in Southeast Virginia, but I'll try to give you some clues if you are not viewing this from that area. I just want to go through a couple of objectives that I'm going to try to cover during this talk. I'm going to talk about the monarch migration and the challenges that they face. We're going to talk about how to really the starting place and ending place and middle place is understanding a life cycle of a butterfly, whether it's a monarch or any species. I'll try to focus on monarchs, but I am going to talk about other species and life cycle. The importance of host plants and nectar plants. We cannot create this life cycle of a butterfly without those. And then if you want to dig a little deeper, building your own way station in the area that you're at, how you can do that. It's very easy to do. It's just a way of strategically planting plants so that these monarchs on their migration will visit your way station and you're supporting them in that activity. Small part of the presentation will just be a mention on citizen science and tagging. If you have a curious mind, citizen science and tagging are really important in the monarch migration and studying the monarch migration. And then I'm going to end with the bonus and benefits of a way station in your yard. So we're going to get started. So it's hard when you're talking about monarchs, really, where do you start with monarchs? Do you start with the egg? Do you start with the generations? Where do you start with understanding monarchs? I do have a picture here of monarchs that are mating. This is really a big bonus if you have a monarch habitat. When you see monarchs happy and mating in your yard, that is a bonus. So I'm just starting there with the picture that it does start with creation and the mating of butterflies. The migration is really interesting because, like I said, and I'm going to move to this picture, the monarch butterflies in North America have a really unique migration pattern. And this slide comes from monarchwatch.org, which I heavily emphasize that you look at if you're trying to understand more about monarch migration and that you would like to build a monarch way station to support these journeys north and journeys south. The big view or broad view concept of a monarch migration, we'll look at this, we'll start now in this season, which is fall. Monarchs are traveling south to locations where they overwinter. And I'm going to turn on my laser pointer. So monarchs are traveling south right now. It's the start of the southward journey to their overwintering sites, which is in Mexico. Now, there's some question whether some of our monarchs might actually go in our area here in Virginia, might go to Florida, but since that's still kind of a question mark, I'm going to focus on where they're going to overwinter in the sites in Mexico. There are some west monarchs that have an overwintering site on the West Coast. And anybody who's watching all the wildfires in the West Coast know that the monarchs, they already face challenges, but they're facing extreme challenges with all the fires because they end up, this is their migratory pattern on the West Coast. So I'm going to focus on this one, the big migration. And as these super generation, I'm going to call them, these fall migration monarchs get down to winter on site, they really have a life cycle that's about 5 to 7 months. They're actually birthed up here and they're coming back down here. The beauty of the monarch migration is it's not just one species. Like when you think about migration of animals and mammals like whales or dolphins, that's one species who's doing a migration to breed and a migration back south to live during certain times. The monarch that travels from Canada down to overwinter in Mexico is going to start a life cycle that is going to take 4 generations to get back up to Canada. And then the great grandchild of that monarch butterfly is going to come right back down to the overwintering place in Mexico. The great grandchild of that monarch that overwintered is going to make that same journey that its great grandparent did the fall season before. So these are really essentially generationally species that are doing this all by how they have been naturally made, how they have this internal sense to do this great migration is beyond me. I think it's a supernatural thing, and it's something that has piqued my interest because it's just so other that it's hard to really explain how this happens and happens so successfully during year after year. So this season right now, if you're seeing monarchs, they are traveling down south to this overwintering site. Now in the spring, just to let you know how the migration pattern actually works, about the first week of March, these super generation monarchs are going to start to warm up and flutter. They will travel as far as usually about around Texas, and they are going to deposit an egg in Texas. That egg will hatch, and then 31 days later, when it hatches, it's going to travel on into this area, including our area in Virginia right here. And that next generation is going to deposit eggs in our area along this band, and those eggs will grow and release, and that adult monarch will travel into the upper bands of the North America area, into Iowa and Ohio and Great Lakes regions. And they will deposit eggs, and that generation is going to hatch and then deposit a great grandchild generation, which is that super generation. Now that super generation that's going to be up in this area are the ones that are created to come back for the southern journey, for the journey south to go back to the overwintering sites. The life cycle of those intermittent adults is generally about 3 to 5 weeks. So during this intermittent time before the journey south, you may see monarchs. Their duty is just to lay those eggs so that the generations do get north and then end up returning back south. So you may see some monarchs that are in your yard. That is normal during the summertime, but in the late fall, or actually it's early fall, they start migrating down, even August, September from the most northern points. They're going to come on back down. Those monarchs are actually going to live these 7 months. They're the super generation. So they're not quite ready to, they have lipid storage and fat storage that helps them in the Great Migration, but they're not thinking of reproducing at this point, not until March. So they're very different from the monarchs that are traveling north, but they're also the same species that are going to end up traveling back south. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. It's just so hard to explain where to start with them because it's a constant continuum with the monarch butterflies. But right now we're in the fall migration. So all of our monarchs are traveling south to the fall right now to the Mexico wintering sites. And one thing I want to bring a good pointing at is we are latitude 37. So this is going to be our peak season for seeing monarchs, which is going to start pretty much next week. Some of you probably are seeing monarchs now. They like to roost and come down. They're drinking deeply. We want to have all those nectar plants around during that time period. And if you're a tagger of monarchs, if you're looking at the tagging, the citizen science of monarchs, you want to tag during this season as well, because this is what has been determined as our time period for the Great Migration. So now that we've understood a little bit about the Great Migration, what's the problem? There could be climate change issues, all of those things, but the problems I want to deal with are people problems. People have interrupted the Great Migration patterns in significant ways. For us in the upper North American areas, we have interrupted the migration patterns by spraying fields, taking away milkweed, which is the monarch's host plant, which means that's the place that they lay their eggs, where the caterpillars grow. So if you take away that milkweed by making very neat yards and or neat fields for growing corn, mass growing of corn, or even soybeans and things that farmers do a lot in this corn belt region. If you take away the monarch butterfly's host plant, which is milkweed, then they are going to struggle on this migration pattern. One effort that I put here on the slide is the Monarch Highway, which many efforts are being made right on I-35, that corridor. If you've traveled through these states going up to that Corn Belt region, they've made extreme efforts of planting milkweed on this I-35 corridor to help the North American issues of removing the milkweed from their sites. So even if the monarchs travel outside of those corridors, we can help significantly by planting milkweed, their host plant. So I'm going to stress that about milkweed. You can't say enough about it, the importance of that. We have, I think there's been a lot, especially in the last 20 years, because the monarch numbers are so low right now. People are bringing milkweed back into the yards. It's a very pretty plant, and I want to give its praise. I know it has the word weed in it, but it is a very beautiful and enjoyable plant in your garden when you know the benefits of it. The second problem that is affecting the monarch numbers is they overwinter in a tree in the Mexican winter sites called the oyamel tree. And if you are struggling with feeding your family with resources, you might log an oyamel tree just to feed a family. So the oyamel trees are really reducing in size just because people need to log them for food resources or log them for working resources. So this whole idea of conservation in the Mexico wintering sites is important. So with a decrease in the oyamel trees, the monarchs don't have a place to overwinter. This has been reducing quite a bit. I believe there were 2.110 hectares recorded in 2021 season. And if you do a little bit of math, they say each, you need to have about 300 million monarchs to sustain the species. Monarch Watch has come up with that, or Joint Monarch Venture has come up with that you really should have about 300 million monarchs to sustain the species. And at 50 million monarchs per hectare, and if there was only 2.10 hectares of oyamel trees, we're not at that 300 million monarch need to sustain the species. So this has got people's attention. Look how low it got down in look how low it got down in 2013 and 2014. It got down to 0.0 hectares. And this is where it got down to, this is what it was last year, 2.10 hectares. We had a good year in 2018, 2019. There are other things that affect the monarch migration, a severe storm, and that's where the weather issues come in. Severe storms, severe freezing, things that happen in Mexico during this time period when they're getting ready to fly in March significantly affect the monarch migration too. So I'm glad that we as citizen scientists are watching this and that we're watching these numbers, and we're hopefully helping by making our waystations or increasing, at least by putting milkweed into our yards for the journey north and the journey south. So just to go over the life cycle of the butterfly, the milkweed is needed for the monarch butterfly. The egg is deposited on the milkweed. The caterpillar will hatch from the egg, eat the egg and the milkweed leave, just like the hungry caterpillar. It's going to get big and it's going to grow, and then it'll form a chrysalis. This is stage 3 of the monarch butterfly. And then finally, the monarch butterfly will hatch, usually about 31 days during this summer season in the South. From egg to butterfly is about 31 days. Now, I raise them on our Waystation here on our porch. I do like to capture them and try to protect them from predation, especially in the April season when we get that first generation laying eggs here in our area, and the milkweed's just that high will get eggs. It's really interesting when that happens. I noticed about 31 days is the cycle level for the monarch butterfly. This is monarch egg, caterpillar, chrysalis, and the butterfly, but I do want to show you some other ones because this works for anything in your butterfly world. If you want to draw them into your yard, you want to have host plants where they lay their eggs. Each butterfly has a unique egg pattern to it. We've got the monarch egg, the red-spotted purple egg, fritillary egg, the black swallowtail egg, yellow swallowtail egg, buckeye. They're all different and they look different, and it's fun to find those. It's like hunting for treasures to see the eggs. So that's cycle 1 of that life cycle. Cycle 2, you might have different caterpillars because you've had the host plants that draw them. So the spice bush or the black swallowtail, the monarch, red spotted purple, buckeye, and you have your yellow swallowtail there. So stage 2, you're going to have that caterpillar stage. They'll go into chrysalis. So you need things in your garden where they can hang out and form their final stage before they become a butterfly. This is also a predation stage. So sometimes I like to bring them in a protected area so that they can hatch without being eaten by something else in the garden, especially the monarchs, because I'm trying to help with the problems that they're facing with their numbers. So really important in your yards, whether you decide to build a monarch waystation or you don't decide to build a monarch waystation and you just want butterflies to visit, you need 2 kinds of plants in your butterfly garden. You need host plants, and these are the nurseries of the butterflies in the species of your garden. It's where they're going to eat and grow. So think of them as the nurseries. Eggs are deposited. Remember that plants are specific to species. Caterpillars will hatch, and that plant will provide all of the food that that caterpillar needs to grow into the full adult butterfly. Nectar plants are important because once the actual butterfly hatches, they need food and energy to be that mature butterfly that flies around. Life cycles or life of that adult butterfly might be the 3 weeks or the 7 months. You just don't know what stage your butterfly is in or how long that cycle is going to last. But while it is the adult butterfly, it needs food and energy to fly. They do like a buffet, don't we all? Everybody likes to go to Golden Corral because you have choices. Butterflies like choices too. They love cluster blooms that provide sugar and vitamins and minerals, and you can supplement your garden with a bowl of rotten fruit or toss out your rinds from your cantaloupe or your watermelon. They like all of that sugary water. They like minerals. They can cluster in puddles. So there's all sorts of elements that you like to think about. Just to give you some other examples besides milkweed that are host plants to butterflies, this is in our area. So it's good to know why we have so many pawpaw trees and why we see this zebra swallowtail, because that's their host plant. Our state butterfly in Virginia is eastern tiger swallowtail. Well, that makes sense because we have a lot of tulip poplar or sweet bay magnolia. That's their host plant. If you want to see this beautiful species, the red spotted purple, they like willows, curly willows, pussy willows, weeping willows. So if you have any kind of willow species in your yard, you're likely to get this and many other choices of butterfly. For the spice bush, you want to have a spice bush or a sassafras tree. Those are both native in our area, so it's not surprising that we get those species of butterflies. Other host plants, question marks and commas, they like hop vines and false nettle and elms. Buckeyes like snapdragons or plantain or toadflax. So if you like things constantly munching in your garden, these are going to draw them in so that you can enjoy the adult butterfly. Always need to remember to plant a lot of extra stuff, because once you get these eggs, they are going to hatch into caterpillars and they will eat your garden. And speaking of that, the black swallowtail, if anybody's had dill or parsley in their garden, they know they're going to get these black swallowtail caterpillars in it. So I like to use fennel in my garden because it grows really big and there seems to be enough for everybody. Both fritillaries or even variegated fritillaries, they like passion vine, and passion vine is a native plant in this area. Just a couple more. Red admirals like false nettle, so you will see some of those in this area because of the native plant false nettle. Clouded sulfurs, they like white clover. They like other things too, but clover, if you see that, if you can leave some clover out in your yard and not manicure it so perfectly, you're going to get some really pretty butterflies just from the clover in your yard, plus the benefit of the pollinators for bees with clover. But the species for the monarchs, and the only thing that really they lay their eggs on, they'll lay their eggs on other things, but they can't eat anything but the milkweed. That is really important to know. If you're going to really draw or help the monarch butterfly, you need to have milkweed. Variegated fritillaries, they love violets and passion vines. So we get a lot of those in our area because both of those are, the passion vine especially is the native in our area that draws or recreates that life cycle here. So I can't say enough about just can't say enough about milkweed, because it's the only host plant for the monarch butterfly. So I'm trying to let me take my laser off and see if I can. I thought I would be able to. I'm sorry, I had a film there, but it doesn't seem to be running with my PowerPoint.
Hi, Joni, it's Judith. I think perhaps stop using the laser.
Okay.
And try clicking again.
There we go. Thank you. Appreciate that. So this is a farmer. He created a milkweed field for me because he had pity on me. I was trespassing and looking for that milkweed one day, and he asked me what I was doing, and I told him about milkweed, and he was a very nice farmer, and he created this beautiful patch in his field, just really for our enjoyment. I was glad that he learned about milkweed and enjoyed it. You can see it's a beautiful plant. These are as tall as me. This is the common milkweed. I'm about 5 foot tall. And it's on the verge of blooming or is blooming. So I can't even describe the fragrance, except it's like lilacs on steroids. It's very, very fragrant, beautiful plant. Doesn't really jive with being a weed, does it? It's a very pretty plant. It can be invasive. Maybe that's the weed part, because it can grow. It shoots out kind of side shoots off of it, and it runs, so it can grow into other areas of your yard easily. So that I end up pulling up what I don't want and editing my yard. But you can see all the activity in this field. This is like probably a late June, early July day, and there is just lots and lots of activities. It's not just drawing that monarch butterfly, it's drawing other species. Okay, I want to show you specifically, when we get just a few minutes, look at what's happening to this milkweed plant. These are Variegated fritillaries. I see I think it's a fiery skipper, and I see another skipper here, but they're just eating up that nectar. The bonus about milkweed is it's not only a host plant for the monarch butterfly, it's a nectar plant for all species of butterflies. It's providing that sugar that they need for flying. Okay. Types of milkweed in our area, if you're familiar, if you want to grow it in our area, I would suggest doing the common, which I just showed you, the very tall milkweed, very fragrant milkweed. You can cut it down and it will have a second bloom. It will have a second stalk. So you can manage this well in your garden so that it can last all summer long. So that's the common milkweed. The butterfly weed is a native plant. This is a great nectar plant in my world. I don't see a lot of monarch butterflies laying eggs on the butterfly weed, but it is an awesome nectar plant. You'll see many, many different species sipping from those clusters of blooms. There's also the swamp milkweed in our area. When you're doing a monarch waystation, they ask you to do more than one variety of milkweed. The blooming time for the common milkweed, the blooming time for the butterfly weed, and the blooming time for the swamp milkweed are more of a continuum. They can bloom through several times throughout the summer season. So you're going to be able to keep butterflies laying eggs or nectaring as they need if you have more than one of these milkweed species in your yard. I just wanted to show a beautiful picture, and this people always like to look at this because they can remember this from childhood, that these milkweed pods, the seed pods, when they, in the fall, when they're ready to open up, they just fly away. That's because milkweed likes to plant right on the surface, very shallow surface. So if you get milkweed seeds and you want to plant milkweed, just barely press it into the ground. It needs to go through a winter cycle. It needs to freeze or have that death to resurrect in the springtime. So we want to make sure that you're not, planting your milkweed seeds when you get them too deep. Just to make a comment on milkweed species, they're different in different parts of the United States. So you have regions, and on monarchwatch.org, you can find the particular milkweed that you would like to, that will be successful in your particular region. All right, just to review again about host plants and nectar plants. The host plants are the nurseries for the butterfly garden. They're the place that the egg can hatch, the caterpillar can grow, and the nectar plants are the ones that give the food and energy for the adult butterfly. So I want to give you some options for those nectar plants. Butterfly bush is a great one, Coreopsis. That's native plants in this area, and they're the first bloomers. Cleome, coneflower, hollyhocks, passionflower, Liatris, verbena. All of these are great nectar plants. You can see the ports that are going on right there in the Liatris. There's a native type of Liatris that they will just flock to. They will choose that every time if you put it into your garden. Coneflower, Cleome, hollyhocks, passionflower, all these ones that I have starred, they're a twofer, just like milkweed. They are both a host plant and they're a nectar plant. So if you're going to choose plants and you only have a certain amount of space, you're going to want to choose wisely, ones that are probably in that twofer category of being a host and a nectar plant. More nectar plants. These are pictures from my Waystation. Sunflowers are great. Those are the fall for me. These Maximilian sunflowers that come out now, they're very, very helpful at this time when butterflies are nectaring and getting ready to do their final stages, either in their migration pattern or if they go into diapause for the winter in our area. Cosmos, lantana, multiple ports again in that lantana. Hyssop, marigold, garden phlox, lots and lots of choices that you can choose in your garden that will bring those abilities to nectar in your garden. Abelia, asters. Asters, again, is that one that's a twofer. It's a both a host plant and a nectar plant. Pentas, oriental, sweet William, sage, viburnum. Some of my favorites, and especially this time of the year, of course, you have your milkweed, which is the host and nectar plant, Joe Pye weed, and you can find Joe Pye weed that blooms at various points in the year. Also, you have your goldenrod, which is blooming. You can get goldenrod, that different types of species of goldenrod in your garden that bloom at different times. Well, why is that important for it to bloom at different times? You want to help that migration pattern. Remember, your journey north of the monarch butterflies, they need those blooming flowers in the spring and in the summer. Well, in the fall, when they're journeying south, they have a 3,000-mile journey. They need to stop at nectaring stations along the way to their overwintering site. So don't let that that fall garden go, or don't cut it too early, because there are so many species that need those nectaring ports right before the cold season of late fall comes around. So get out there, deadhead your flowers, cut them so that you have continual blooms all the way into, I'd say, October, late October in our area. So when all of that comes together and you have good hosts and good nectar plants in your garden, this is something that can happen. In this area, I have some zinnias, which is just a pack of seeds. Actually, mine zinnias come back as volunteers. This Cleome came back as a volunteer. I've got some Rudbeckia there. Those also came back as volunteers just by deadheading in the garden. We can have some nice nectar plants for that adult butterfly. So I want to talk a little bit about becoming a monarch waystation. I'll come back to kind of experimenting or being a citizen scientist, but I'm going to focus right now on becoming a monarch waystation. It's not hard. There are, as of August 4th, there were 35,768 monarch waystations in North America. And here is, let me put my laser pin back on. Here is a dot for every one of those 35,000 and where they're at. Thank goodness we've got a lot in that Corn Belt region. These are for our those western migrating monarchs, which is helpful to see. And you can see where the milkweed kind of stops. It kind of stops right up in that band. But mine is right here, and the Williamsburg Botanical Garden is in that area in Southeast Virginia. My waystation is 7576. I noticed Judith said hers was in the 3,000, so she got the Botanical Garden got theirs started before I did. And I have a shout out to Governor's Land Garden Club. If anybody's watching from that, Kathy Irvine and her folks just got their waystation registered, and their 35,556 number, and congrats to them. So some of the guidelines for making a monarch waystation is you want the size of the garden. They suggest it to be 100 square feet or more. Exposure does need to be sun. Milkweed likes sun. Swamp milkweed can kind of have part sun, lots of water, but you do need some sun, and they ask for about 6 hours a day of sun. Milkweed, they suggest 10 plants of milkweed, 2 or more varieties. As I mentioned before, they can bloom sequentially, providing food and a site for laying their eggs for more than one season, or more than one cycle over the summer. Nectar plants, you want to make sure that you plant nectar plants that bloom sequentially in the seasons, from early spring all the way until late fall. So you want to make sure you've got a bloom in the garden. And the management that they suggest, you know, like any garden, you need to thin it. You don't want to have too much in one place because they don't have the ability to grow and bloom. Fertilize it, a place that the ability for it to get water, And of course, the management of using pesticides or insecticides in your garden. The Monarch Waystation is really a registration. It takes probably 10 minutes to fill out, but this is something you'll want to print out and review ahead of time. When I worked with the Governor's Land Garden Club, this is in the February, we talked about making a Monarch Waystation. They got this particular, they got the registration pages here, and they looked, and it shows you what you need. It's kind of like a questionnaire. They're asking you how big you want it to be. It can be small, less than 200 square feet, or it can be colossal, which is greater than 5,000 square feet. So whatever you want it to be in your area. They want you to make sure that you are planting host plants for the monarch. So they're going to ask you about milkweed, and here are all the choices of milkweed in all of North America. So you are going to say yes or no that you have these milkweed plants to sustain the monarch life cycle for the journey north and journey south of the Great Migration that it goes under. Then it's going to ask you about nectar plants. So you need these nectar plants in there to help with the same cycles, that journey north, journey south, and they're going to give you choices of those plants that have those that have those different blooming times to sustain it throughout those 3 seasons. Then you're going to have more nectar plants on the second page, lots of choices. You can be very strategic about what you're planting in your garden. And then it's going to talk to you about sustainable practices, that water, that thinning, managing use of insecticides and pesticides. So it's very easy to make a Monarch Waystation. They give you great ideas. Governor's Land did a great job because they reviewed these, they planned them, they planned what they were going to plant. I was able to share some of my plants from my Waystation with their garden that they designated out. And by fall, they had a true Monarch Waystation garden. So this year, they put in for their registration certification. And of course, if you build it, they will come. Those monarchs did come. And I got a picture from Kathy Irvin just earlier in August saying they're here. So just a great story. And I encourage you, if you have the ability to make a Monarch Waystation on your property, please work towards doing that. Some references, and I gave these to Judith, and she'll actually post them with the live stream. Journey North is that citizen scientist site for migration. You can become a dot on a map. When your milkweed comes up, you can report it and you become a dot on a map, and you can actually watch as the milkweed is forming, how it's going north with the latitudes. And then you can report adults, you can report eggs, you can report fall migration patterns. And it's not just for the monarch butterfly. Journey North does all sorts of migration patterns. Maybe you're interested in hummingbirds. Maybe you're interested in whale migration, or times of sunsets or sunrises, or when the tulips come up. There's just a lot of citizen science going on with Journey North. So I do want to encourage you, if you have a curious mind and you want to be part of what people are doing across North America to help look at these patterns, look at things ultimately that are happening with climate change, how things might be changing in our lifetimes, that is a great way to be involved. Monarch Watch, I can't say enough about them. They also offer tags for the fall for people who like to tag the monarchs. The tagging the monarchs is something that's helpful to show how far they've traveled to go to different areas. The tags that reveal for people who raise monarchs, there's a question of, can I raise a monarch? Is it going to make the Great Migration? So it's giving a lot of different data for tagging. If you do tag monarchs for the Great Migration, that will give you some information. Monarch Watch also supplies plugs of milkweed for people who want to make educational gardens, Monarch Waystations. So please visit their website. They have just incredible information on there for you to get started with your Monarch Waystation. And that is the website that you're going to need to register your certify your Monarch Waystation will be that particular website. Monarch Joint Venture is also another one that's really making strides to promote the use of milkweed and bringing it back into our gardens to help with encouraging the or strengthening the monarchs in our area. I'm also happy to talk to you if you want to talk about milkweed. If you're in this area and you want some milkweed or milkweed seeds, just let me know and I'll try to get that to you. I like that they have a Facebook for milkweed. I'm not a Facebook person. I am an Instagram person, but I'm not a Facebook person. So I like that they have Williamsburg Botanical Garden has a way of getting it, because you do run out of milkweed and you have caterpillars and you want to do as much as you can for that particular species, especially if you get to a certain point and you just want to get them across the finish line. That's nice to know other people are helping with the milkweed. And finally, I want to talk about the bonus of a Monarch Waystation. We really intended to emphasize like the Monarch Waystation in our yard. We really tried to follow that narrative on those registration sheets and provide different plants on those sheets that are host plants and nectar plants. But we get so many different species in our yard. It's a living, breathing thing. It's beyond being a pollinator garden. It's a wildlife area. It's a habitat. It's a home for so many things. It's our home. We have these native friends that come into our area, and it's just provided a place for us to live and learn and share with other people. I walked yesterday and took this picture. This is a snowberry clearwing caterpillar. So if you like the hummingbird moth, it likes honeysuckle or coral honeysuckle plant is its host plant. So I just love seeing this in September, walking out there and seeing the Waystation doing its thing. It's providing life for animals. And then of course the beautyberry, I think a switch flipped in last 2 days, and that's really turning colors right now. And that's just so inviting for the birds and for different things to, rotting fruit is something that butterflies nectar on, but it's also just plenty for the birds to eat. Judith and I both are celebrating the pipevine swallowtail this year. We have both grown pipevine, and we had caterpillars this year. So one just hatched, and I was able to get that beautiful color there of the pipevine swallowtail. Garden spiders. I've got these friends, these eastern fence lizards that come out when I come out, because I tease them with and feed them mealworms sometimes that I have for my bluebirds. We have heirloom scuppernauts in our Waystation, so those are ripening right now. All of that to say, it's just a living, breathing, growing, wonderful place. So I just wanted to finish up with that. And if you have any questions, we can take any here during the live stream, but also if you'd like to email me, I'm at waystation7576@gmail.com, or you can follow me at Instagram at waystation7576.
Hi, Joni. This was a great program, and we've had several people watching live stream. They found the corrected link. Thank you. This is what happens when you just practice too much. But thank you for searching for the correct place to go and watch this. Joni, really, I always admire Joni because she just knows so much about it. And she and I, as she mentioned, we both had pipevine swallowtails, but she came to harvest some from my vine, and she found a Pandora's moth caterpillar, which I am so eager to see how that all shakes out. But she is just a dedicated butterfly enthusiast. So we have really just a couple of comments. Andrea D said she planted some milkweed in her yard, and it's not only good for monarchs, but once the flowers bloom, tons of pollinators love it. It's a great plant for so many reasons, just like you said. And then she followed that on with another comment. Also, milkweed beetles and tussock moths love it. Some people don't like them, but I want everyone to enjoy the milkweed. And
Aphids to that. If you have milkweed, you're going to get inundated with aphids. But, just I know that there's enough for everybody. That's all. Like, to get better if I can, if I catch them early enough, I try to take care of that. But you don't always catch them a lot.
Okay, Joni, I'm not sure what is happening, but all of a sudden, your audio sounded like it was being, I'm not sure how to describe it, but we were having some audio problems. Can you repeat what you just said?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't know what's happening with that. I can't hear it on my side. Is it still happening?
Yeah, it is. It
I'm
is.
sorry.
Well, that's the thing. You live stream, you never know what you're going to get. But I don't see any other questions or comments. So I think that we will go ahead and end this. I will add all of the links that Joni talked about into our description. I don't want to mess with any of the settings. I messed with it earlier and did not have a good outcome. So we're going to wait for that. All right. And Joni, you actually look like you might be frozen here. Oh, now I think it's good. Now I think it's good. But all right. Thank you again so much for sharing your knowledge and your passion about butterflies and monarchs. This was a very good presentation. And thank you everyone for watching.